It's absolutely an important conversation. We know that young carers, there are about 1 million young carers in the United Kingdom, and that's children and young people under the age of 18, and young adult carers are under the age of 25. So there's a massive invisible army of children and young people in this country who are providing care to other family members, and they're very largely invisible. We don't really see them, even though they'll be in every classroom in the land. They will be a young carer, and they may well be living next to you, or they'll certainly be living on your street. So, and we know that they've had a very difficult time before COVID and after COVID.
In terms of moving forward in a way which is beneficial to everybody, plans will be put in place, ideas will be talked about that will try and tackle and take care of some of the issues we've had over the course of the last year. Is there a danger that actually young carers' voices will actually be forgotten during that conversation? And how important is it that we make sure that young carers are very much at the centre of how we move forward now?
We really need to take account of young carers' own voices in anything that we do going forward. During the COVID pandemic, we know, because young carers have told us, they've told us in research, they've told us using social media, they've told us in multiple ways, that during this pandemic, they have been locked in, literally locked in, into their families, into their homes. Schools have closed down, health and social care services have gone online, and many young carers have had to do even more caring during the pandemic because they've been living with shielding parents or other family members who have an illness or a disability. And then lots of new young carers have, if you like, started taking on caregiving roles because their family members have become ill, anxious, have had mental health difficulties because of the lockdown. So we know from what young carers are telling us that caring during the pandemic has been an absolute nightmare. They have lost the opportunity for any breaks whatsoever. They haven't been able to go to school, and their opportunities to mix with other people have also been lost. Many young carers have told us that they are now experiencing even further exacerbated mental health problems because of having to care during the lockdown.
Some people will say, well, lockdown's coming to an end, the schools are reopened. Does that make the problem go away? What are those important issues that we need to bear in mind now in terms of monitoring young carers and ensuring that their futures are a bright one?
The problems never really go away for young carers because as long as there is illness, disability, mental health problems, addiction problems, and as long as children have to provide care within their families for parents, for siblings, for grandparents who have one or other of those conditions, then children are always going to be young carers. One of the things that we have to do as a society is to A, recognise their contribution, B, identify them and give them an assessment of their own needs, their ability to continue to provide care, and C, to support them. They need support. They need recognition and support within schools because many young carers do less well at schools than other pupils. They need support at universities because those young carers that are lucky enough to get to university find that they have to miss more lectures and they have a much higher dropout rate than other students. And so it's really critical that as a society, we recognise that what young carers are doing, we recognise that they play a really important role in our society and in our economy. You know, they are effectively looking after people so that other parts of the economy and society can work. And actually, they do so at great personal cost in terms of their own education and their own futures.
I mean, in terms of that, I mean, the studies are pretty clear in terms of the damage that can be caused to the educational qualifications, averaging a grade lower per subject than their non-caring classmates, which is across the board huge when you bear in mind that that's potentially 1 million young people with lower grades, and with lower grades, you know, lower opportunities that would allow a young person to move on. And that's incredibly damaging, isn't it?
Young carers' experiences at school are widely reported as being rather negative, unfortunately, because we do know that they achieve less good grades than their fellow schoolmates. We know that many of them are very tired when they get to school, because actually some of them have already been doing 2 or 3 hours of caring before they get to school and will return to caring roles after school. There's loads of examples of kids who start their day at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, having to get up, get themselves ready for school, having to get their parents up, get them breakfast, maybe shower them or dress them, get them into the right chair, bring them down the stairs, get them into the right chair, get them comfortable. Then the child goes to school. And then the child is worried about their parents while they're at school. And it's not surprising, literally, when you take all that into account, that frankly, some young carers at school just don't perform well. Their behaviour might not be so great. They arrive late, they're falling asleep, etc. And the educational outcomes for young carers are very damaged. You know, some of them are really finding it difficult then to get into the paid labour market because their qualifications are lower. And yet at the same time, and this is the paradox, those children have developed amazing skills, amazing transferable skills, which you would think would be valued and recognised and embraced and supported and celebrated in our economy. And yet, for many young carers, they are locked out of employment and locked out of other opportunities.
And I guess, and I've had many conversations with young carers where that very subject has come up, that when you speak to them, you're almost unsure about what sort of person you're going to meet. And then you meet people who are bright and bubbly and full of life and full of ideas. And from the age of 11, they've been filling in, personal independent payment paperwork on behalf of their parents. They've been shopping. They've been potentially working. They've certainly been looking after potentially finances within a house. And you just think, my goodness, these are brilliant young people, so much ahead of their time. But I think that speaks, doesn't it, of almost a stigma around young carers, that if you were to say young carer, you'd think, oh, here's somebody who's been denied opportunity. Here's somebody who's struggled their way through life. We don't see, here's somebody who's had to be a little bit maybe older and more responsible before their time, who might actually be a little bit ahead of their cohorts of classmates in terms of some of the other things. Sometimes the word is nous, isn't it? They've had to show nous for a great deal of time in a way you can't represent in a piece of paper or give to someone in an exam.
And that's absolutely right. So what we know is that many young carers have this maturity. Some people have called it a false maturity, because it's growing old before your time. It's because you've been forced into doing many things that adults would find very difficult to do, like intimate personal care, feeding, parents or grandparents or siblings, managing the household finances, interpreting where English isn't the first language, interpreting complex medical conditions, which you have no knowledge of as a child, but you have to interpret for social workers, healthcare workers and others, doing the cooking, doing the cleaning, running the whole household. And so many young carers have developed these amazing skills of multitasking, time management, compassion, caregiving, resilience, empathy, patience, all of these things that we really should value within society and within our employment, within our workforce. So they have these great skills, and yet at the same time, they've lost a lot in getting those skills. You know, there's a cost to achieving those skills. And so they've had to give up certain kinds of friendships. They don't want people to come to their homes, their friends to come home, if they're looking after a parent with a mental health or addiction problem. And so you do have this paradox of amazing skills combined with many lost opportunities.
What will be one thing, or a series of short things, which you could introduce, that would change instantly the outlook for the future of young carers and young adult carers? What are those things, or what is that one thing that would fundamentally change potentially what they could see moving forward?
So there are a number of things that we could do instantly, which wouldn't be massive cost, which would change the lives and experiences and opportunities for young carers. One of them would be to do this in schools, to have in every school a designated contact person, a member of the academic staff, a member of the pastoral staff, whatever, who knows about young carers, knows about local resources, knows about facilities, knows about young carers' rights. And so young carers could go to that person, trust them with confidence to get good information and advice. That would make a massive difference, having a known designated person within each school. Another thing that could be done to support young carers immediately would be for young carers to have more breaks from caring. Young carers projects are a really good way of young carers being able to get out of their home, meet with other young carers, see that they're not alone in their caring roles, and share time with other people to talk about similar experiences. So young carers projects offer a fantastic break to young carers. Another thing that could be done is for national and local action plans to be developed. This is really important. We need a national strategy now for young carers and young adult carers. And we need the government to take the lead for that. But we also need, associated with that, every local authority to have a local action plan. How will young carers in your locality be helped and supported, and how will they be assessed so that we know clearly what is it that they need to thrive?
Sound advice. Professor Saul Becker, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for speaking to us.
Thank you very much.